We're not going to try to do Facebook again, are we?
No.
Oh, well. So, well, we're
No,
going to
you're good.
welcome everybody on YouTube who isn't on Facebook because we're not streaming to Facebook.
Yeah. Howdy, everyone. We just made the best, not best intro ever. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Say What. This is the place where you ask and we answer questions about God, the Bible, and the Christian faith. I'm Tim. I'm joined here by Aaron and Aaron, as always. And we've got our good friend Eddie Morales here. He is a part of our church at Mount Carmel, and he also is one of the lead team members on a new ministry that we're starting up called the Acts 1-8 ministry. And we'll be chatting with Eddie tonight as we continue. As we said, this kind of two-part. We talked about the issue of prejudice last week. We'll bring some of that in, but we're also talking about justice and how to serve people in our community and that sort of thing. And so Eddie's a great person within our church. He's not only just a great person, because he is, but he's also a great person to talk about these things with us and someone we can learn from. And so just by the way, as a housekeeping matter, this is our last Say What of this series. We will be taking a break in August, and then we've already got a plan for September where we're going to get into the topic of theodicy, and so we'll be back with Say What in the fall as we keep rolling. But that'll be then. This is now. Mm-hmm. So thanks, guys, for joining. Just to kind of get us started. We've tried to bring in difficult sayings of Jesus to tie into these topics, but I'm going to be boring and I'm going to go with Paul for a moment. Paul, in his letter to the Galatians in chapter 3, is talking with the church, and this whole letter is ultimately not only dealing with Paul's message of the gospel, but the way that the Galatian community received it. And the fact that there were others from outside coming in and kind of telling the Galatian people that they had to adhere to Jewish laws, rights, customs, those sort of things, in addition to, adding to their faith in Jesus. And Paul kind of uses this letter to kind of pull back the reins and get them gospel and Jesus only. And in this letter is a pretty famous quote from Paul, but he says, "There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." And so the idea being that kind of the worldly things that divide us, the things that we divide over, ought not to do so, and that we should be united in our faithfulness in Christ, and that in that unity, we're all one in faith. And so as we talked last week about this subject of prejudice, and as we go on and to justice, it's just good to kind of start off with that frame of mind as we talk. And so we'll turn over to Eddie in a moment, but just beforehand, Aaron, do you have anything to add beyond that?
Man,
go ahead.
It's hard to top that verse, man, because I feel like I'll be brief. In my mind, the essence of that verse is removing barriers that you might any outside person might perceive that there's something that keeps them from being an insider, not just in the faith in general, like as being accepted by Christ, but by being accepted by other people of faith. That there's a place for you in the church on earth, no matter what you look like or what kind of person you are. I just think that's beautiful, man. And I don't feel like there's much I can say to top that. So I stomped on Aaron there.
No, man, not at all. No, I was just gonna say, I think it's very applicable to today, right? And I think it's a good reminder, for us as Christians, as a church, especially what we're facing today in America, in the world, as we're talking about a lot of racial tensions, racial differences, talking about the way that people treat other people. And so for us as Christians, I think most often we would say, well, yeah, everybody is one in Christ, but we don't always treat each other like that, even as Christians. And that's why I think these conversations, a conversation that we had last week with Lavelle and the conversation this evening with Eddie is super important for us as a church.
Yeah. Well, Eddie, so with that, kind of I think probably the starting point for our asking you and hearing what you had to say would be to bridge from last week. So as Aaron just reminded us, we talked with our friend from Life Spring Christian Church, Lavelle, the worship minister over there. He's a Black man, and we talked about not only kind of the issues that people are talking about, in all sorts of pockets of conversation, but more pointedly, we asked him about his personal experiences. And so I guess as a starting point, thinking about matters of prejudice, matters of what is good and right, as over and against that prejudice. Like what are your experiences as a member of the Latino community, and also just what are your experiences? What's life been like for you?
Well, first off, I really want to echo something that Lavelle shared last week in the on screen speech that he made. That color of our skins is something that should not necessarily be forgotten or overlooked. God made us different colors for a reason. If he wanted us all to look one color, he would have made us all one color. Obviously, in my opinion, God's a very creative person, and he wanted there to be many different colors, and that's why he created us in different colors. Not that we would, not for us to just overlook it and say, when I look at you, I don't see your color. And I think that that's important for us to recognize, and I really appreciate him bringing that up, because it is who we are. But like he also said, look a little bit further into that person. And I spoke to my wife about this, and I used the analogy of a red ball and a green ball, that these balls could have some very intricate designs in them, but if you hold them up to somebody, what is the first thing that they're going to see? They're going to see the colors, and they're going to gravitate to that. But if that's all as far as you look, and you don't look any further to see, wow, there's a nice intricate design in each one of these colors, you're going to miss the whole point of what's behind those colors. And it's similar to people of all colors. We need to look past that and see, who are they as a human being? Who are they as a creation of God? For me, from a background, a little bit of a background experience, it's a little bit unique for me. I was born and raised in the country of Panama, but I was raised as a foster child by American parents, and they were white American parents. And so a lot of my upbringing was in English schools, American schools, and growing up with friends in school and church, or church and play were Panamanian friends. But one thing that I told my wife is that you always know where you come from. You always know that you're different. I always knew in our family growing up that I was different than everybody else, all the other 3 members in my family, because of my skin color. And often we would come here to rural America, which would have been in the Midwest, in the Kansas areas where my foster parents grew up in. And as missionaries, they'd go around to different churches, and we would visit all these different churches. And in those churches, there was not a single Latino person, not a single Black person. It was 100% white. And believe you me, I knew that I was different the minute I walked into that church. And it's not to say that it was wrong or anything like that. It's just a matter of fact. So there is a human aspect of who we are as people that we tend to want to gravitate towards people. I'd be lying to you if I told you that when I walk into a grocery store and I overhear some people talking in Spanish, that doesn't perk up my ears and I want to go and talk to them, because that's a little bit of who I am. That's a little bit of my heritage. That's a little bit of my background speaking Spanish. And there's nothing wrong with that. We should all have a desire to have some level of connection to our roots, to where we come from, to our heritages and things like that. And all of our heritage, Black, white, Asian, or whatever, our rich heritages. And but growing up, would never really say that. I had a couple of times where kids would probably make fun of me, but no, generally I would not say that I had too many encounters where I clearly understood that someone was being prejudiced towards me. I do recall one time, soon after my wife and I were married, that we happened to be in one of her hometowns. That's a pretty small town in eastern Pennsylvania, and we were at a restaurant having dinner, and a few guys there in the store or in the restaurant at that time, I guess, took offense to my skin color and wanted to challenge me outside to a fight, and were calling me names and things like that. And we just basically let it go, and eventually they went away. And that's probably really the only time that I truly can say that I would have encountered any type of a racial confrontation, so to speak. So I feel like it is, and kind of that leads into the aspect of where we are today. Or I think a lot of the more recent events that have happened racially have kind of caused the issues of immigration to kind of fall behind the scenes a little bit. And we're not necessarily talking about those things that much right now.
Right.
But I think prior to that, though, it was a big issue. And the Latino community was really feeling a lot more nervous at that point because of how they felt our government was reacting towards them, or would react towards them. And I think it heightened the level of distrust with white people. The Latino culture in and of itself tends to be kind of reserved, and I'm not going to really tell you something if I don't really know you, unless if you're part of my community, and it stays very tight. So breaking in and gaining some trust with them is very difficult. And then these things just only compounded the situation even more, making them want to even pull back and fall into the shadows a little bit more. And I think that's made it even more difficult, and it's going to be a little bit of a challenge even for our Acts 1-8 ministry to try to break into that area. And it's just really something that I think that we as a church and as a Christian organization, as God's followers, Jesus disciples, it is our duty to reach out to people regardless of their skin color. And because nowhere in the Bible do I see that it says go into all the world and make disciples of only white people, or of only brown people, or of only black people. And if we're truly following God's commandments, I believe that is telling us that we need to go, and doesn't matter who they are, what situation they're in, what socioeconomic background they come from, what country they come from, what their color of their skin is, what their level of education, what their pocketbook looks like. We're supposed to love them just like Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. And I think that's what I feel is our church's duty and responsibilities, especially in a time like this where there's so much tension on all bounds of just equality and on racism and things like that. And it's our opportunity, I think, as a church to really rise to the top through example and through leadership, to show the community and show people outside of our walls that
Right.
we don't, none of those things really matter to us. What matters to us is what he thinks of us. And I think it's not going to be an overnight thing, but if we can make one difference, and just like with the Acts 1:8 ministry, that was one thing that we talked about, that, you know, we would love for there to be masses of people coming to know the Lord, but even if it's one person,
Right,
that's one more person that into the kingdom of heaven, and that matters.
That's awesome. That everything you said right there is better than most sermons. So thank you for that. Eddie, so I kind of already picked up a little bit of, well, a lot of your heart for this ministry, but maybe could you tell us a little bit about the heart behind it, maybe the why behind it, how things have got started and how they're going so far?
Yeah, the how behind it, I think, is in a long road in the making.
Mm-hmm.
Like I shared earlier, I'm a foster child of missionary parents to the country of Panama. And as a kid, as a missionary kid, you're always tugged around here and there. Wherever your parents go, you go. Wherever they move, you move, and things like that. And I guess I always told myself, I'm not going to be one of those, a missionary when I grow up, and I'm just going to find a place and settle down, and that's going to be it. And I'm not going anywhere. And it's interesting because God sometimes takes those opportunities to say, kind of laughs in your ear and says, "Oh, that's what you thought." Yeah. And so I felt like God was telling me that I needed to do something with my Spanish speaking abilities, with the Latino community for years. And I truly became a modern day Jonah. And I really did everything I could to make excuses, to run away, to say no, to just like Moses, I can't really speak well. I don't have the words. I'm not a leader. I can't do this, God. You've got the wrong guy. And God just kept after me. And that's the wonderful thing about who God is. He never stops chasing us down. And he just pursues us and pursues us, and he never gives up, and he never tires out. And it was just one day that I just felt that, God, I can't continue to say no any longer. I understand what you're telling me, and if this is for your kingdom and this is what you want me to do, I don't know how to do it. And if this is going to be something that you want me to do, it's going to have to be you, because I have absolutely no skills. I have no clue how this is going to come together, and it's going to have to be all you. And that's how I knew at that time and then that I knew that it was God that was leading me to do this, because he gave me a peace about it. And I'm not that type of a person. I need to know how, I need to know when, and I need to know all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed before I move forward with a plan. And I had no clue when I approached the leadership about this. And I told them that. I said, I have no idea how God's going to do this, but I know it's God. And they've jumped right on board with me, and I was just ecstatic about that. And so I just told them that I feel like God wants us to be able to, and I shared with the leadership just what I shared with you guys before we got on the air, that my picture of the true church of God is a multicolored church of all colors, races, and ages. And to me, That's what heaven's like. That's what heaven's like. And then and there I knew that God had a mission for me. And who was I to say no? And so I jumped in with both feet and say, God, here I am. Let's go. It's going to be a wild ride. It's going to be great. And so we started meeting. We formed a steering committee, and we started meeting and having plans before the pandemic hit, and came up with ideas and plans of how we were going to do things. And then the pandemic hit, and things kind of went silent for a while. And I kept thinking, and Joan and I were talking to each other, man, because one of the first key aspects of it was to make one-on-one contacts that we could then start doing home visitations with to establish relationships. That was our first step in to getting to know people, to eventually have those relationships gather in a group of people with some event that would happen on our campus. And I was like, well, I can't even get out. I can't even go. The people that I thought would be giving me contacts are not available because schools are out now. And I don't know how this is going to happen. It's going to fall apart. And suddenly out of the blue, we had asked Interparish Ministries, do you have any contacts with Latino communities that we could partner with you and help you? And their response to us was that, oh, the Latino community is so difficult to break into, and we don't have hardly anybody to connect with, but my name was out there already with them. And so somebody that works with Interparish Ministries, which is from English as a second language, that works with the Claremont County Schools, contacted Interparish Ministries and said, we've got a need for a young Guatemalan man that needs some financial assistance, and he needs some help navigating the system here in the States. He doesn't know how to do things. Is there somebody that could help him? And so they contacted me, and so we got this person and I got together, and we started communicating. And the next day we went over and met this young man, and he's a father and got a son here in the States and a wife and daughter in Guatemala still. And I got to meet him. Just yesterday, I went with him to the ICE offices to check on his status here of immigration and so forth. But to me, that was God already starting to work, because this contact that I made has other contacts with other schools, and she's got other families within her ESL program that are also immigrants, and she knows ESL teachers in other elementary schools that have foreigners there as well. So I feel like this is already a beginning. I met with the apartment manager of the apartment he lives with, and she's like, we've got other people around here too that don't know their way around here that could really use your help as well. And so I'm getting people from an apartment complex that are telling me that they've got people to connect with me. So it's interesting, because we were starting and trying to go down this path, but God had this path designated for us to go down. He opened the way and paved the way for that. And it's still the same process that we were thinking of initially, of making one-on-one contact, but it just wasn't in the way we were thinking about doing it. And this way has worked out much more multiplied, so to speak. And it's been really neat just to see how God has suddenly just burst open the gates. And now we're making so many more contacts with people. And so I feel like after this pandemic is over, we can actually have a core group of people that we can actually start doing events with. But the idea then overall is that people from our own church and our own congregation can come and be a part of this ministry, and we can show the world and show the community that it doesn't matter whether you can speak the language or not, that is not an excuse of why you can't love on somebody and show them Christ's love by the way you are willing to step forward out of your comfort zone and meet those individuals. And the idea and the whole goal there is to make this a family thing, is that the Latinos are very family oriented, and our purpose is to keep the family together and have interactions within our church, on our campus, at different locations, and have soccer events where we can invite the Latino community to come play soccer for a day, where our church family can join in. We've got people in our congregation who've already volunteered to, hey, I'm all over that one if you need help with that. And we have people who are already willing to help tutor extracurricular activities to help augment the teaching that goes on in classrooms with these ESL teachers, to say, how can our church partner with you to help these children learn, and also provide an opportunity for adults, their parents, who may not otherwise get an opportunity to get free English classes, to help them while their child is learning the classroom English. The parents can also be being taught tutored some English by our church family. I believe our church has a lot of talent and a lot of people that have skills that would fit right into any need that we would have in this ministry. And that would go with any ethnic group, for that matter of fact. And I don't believe that there's anybody in our church that does not have a skill or a gift or a talent that could not be applied in some way, fashion, or form in this ministry. And so my hopes would be is that our church would just really rally together and say, I'm not gonna look at these people based on the color of their skin. I'm gonna look at them as God looks at me. And yes, it is hard for me to not do that, but I'm gonna pray earnestly about it, that God would help break that barrier in my life, that I can look at people the way He looks at them.
So thank you so much for your time. I want to ask one more question. And this kind of comes back around to something you said. You were talking about the culture and kind of the reserved culture, and then kind of the immigration issues and things like that only exacerbated that. So you knew I was going to ask you this question, but I'm going to ask it a little bit differently, because you just gave a lot of really good practical things about how people can help. But what would be one thing that we as a white community create maybe a hindrance to what you're attempting to do? And then what's one thing that we can do to be a help, maybe that could wipe out the hindrance? And I know that's a bit of a loaded question, but I think let me tell you, I'm asking that because I do think that when you talk about the things that we can do to serve this community, I sensed from some of what you're saying that you already anticipate some of the things that might keep things from rolling as far as the people side. Obviously, God's going to continue to work as He is, but so what's a hindrance and what's a help from our standpoint?
Well, I think one of the hindrances is, unfortunately, it's race, and to be perfectly honest with you, it's got nothing to do with who you are as a person. It even from our perspective as Latinos, if I'm an outside Latino, I see you as white, and can I really trust you because your government is white, and they don't like us, and they want to build walls to keep us out. How do I really know that I can trust you? Now, if somebody like myself goes up to them, well, you and I look alike and we speak the same language. culturally we have a connection there already. So it automatically brings down some barriers automatically. Do I think that that's a fair assessment? No. Should it be that way? No. But unfortunately, it takes one bad apple to ruin a basket of apples. And there, over time, there's been incidences that have affected Latinos wrongly, and that has raised the alert level for most of the Latino community. So therefore, they tend to be very reserved on what they want to share, and how open they're going to be. How do we change that? How do we break that barrier? I think the only way to do that is individually. As individuals, we have to be the change. We have to be the ones that say, I don't care if everybody that's my race has treated these people this way. I refuse to do that. And I'm going to be the difference, and I'm going to make the effort to say, I don't care what color your skin is. All I care about is what the condition of your heart is. And I'm going to do everything that I can to show you, to treat you in the same way that Jesus would have treated you, as he was. And that's like the example, the parable that Jesus said of the Good Samaritan. Who's my brother there? The logic would tell you that obviously the Jewish leaders would have been the brother, but in that case it wasn't, because it had nothing to do with their ethnicity and where they came from. It had everything to do with their heart. And the Samaritan's heart was in the right place and had pity on this person as a human being, and took the time and the resources to bandage this wounded person up and take care of him. And I think that that's what God wants us to do, is to be that Samaritan, to not look at the individuals based on their color of their skin, but of the condition of their heart, and do our part to reach them in that manner. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super helpful. What were we gonna say, Aaron?
Oh, well, I was gonna say, Eddie, I love your heart, and what you've said has reminded me of a couple of things. One is Scripture, Isaiah 1:17, and it says, "Learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, and plead the case of the widow." And it's this idea that there are vulnerable people groups in our country, and there are vulnerable people groups in our communities, and it is our job as the church and as Christians to stand for them and to care for them. And the second thing that, as you were talking, just reminded me is a quote. Tim and I heard this. Dee Dee even shared it in one of his messages earlier. And it's by a guy named Stuart Hall. And Stuart's a fellow Christian. He's also a pastor. In one of his recent kind of talks, he was talking about specifically about COVID-19, but he said this: the opposite of shallow isn't deep, it's personal. And when something becomes personal to us, it then becomes deep. And so when something matters to us, when something is brought to our attention, it matters. And so, for me, as I listen to you talk, a man from the Latino community who very clearly has a passion for that community, a heart for that community. You've never lost that, even though you haven't continued to live in Panama. You've been in the United States for quite some time now. You've never lost that heart for that. But for me, as a white man, while you and I probably have many similarities, we also have many differences. And you've experienced things that I've not experienced growing up. But what you just did is you just made something personal for me, and you've given me a reason to care about it. and what you've done right now is what I hope our church can see, and what I think our community and our country needs to see in these moments is that we have a lot of reason to care, especially as the church. And so what you're doing with that ministry, it gets me excited to where I'm now asking the question, okay, what can I do to help Eddie? Like, I want Eddie to tell me right now, like, Aaron, I need you to do this, is here. So I'm excited to move forward, because the Latino community, as well as other communities in even in our county, they're vulnerable. You know, you're sharing the story of the Guatemalan man. Like, those are people that, as a Christian, I should want to be there for and to help. And so I appreciate you sharing what you did.
Yeah, I'm in too. So I don't know what I can do, but you tell me and I'm in. Yeah, thank you, Eddie, for doing it. Thatch, you have anything to add?
What am I going to add to this, man? I mean, this is
that's
this
two,
is the
that's 2
kingdom at
weeks in a
work.
row, man.
Yeah, it's real, man. It's like these last couple of weeks, it's been like, man, it's just awesome stuff. I'm so glad that our church community has guys like you, Eddie, too. As far as I'm concerned, the organization of the church exists to empower people like you, brother. I think we're all in.
Right on.
Well, I just would add to that whole thing that the thing that really makes it encouraging, and you kind of alluded to that, Aaron, is that is the backing of the church. With any ministry, having the backing of the leadership of the church is essential, because without that, ministries fall apart at the seams all the time. And to see the excitement of the leadership of our church, realizing and understanding that this is a mission field, and if it's a mission field and we're a church, we're supposed to be in the thick of it. And to see even Dee Dee's excitement about, I mean, he's already asked us, well, let's start mapping out when we can have our first multicultural service where we have a message in English and somebody translates in Spanish and things like that. How would we handle multi-language churches, services and things like that? And that just really gets me excited, because part of my dream, and we were driving by a church today and we saw that it had a Spanish church, and it had and it was a smaller building attached to the larger building, which was the main church. And it just kind of made me think that was, here's our church and here's their church. And I really, my dream and my goal is that this is not that for our church, that this is our church, and we speak multiple languages in our church, and we have we will do what it takes to make sure that we can reach all those audiences of different languages, even if it means having translators, or if it means headphones that we put on that has it translating in the audio, or whatever the case may be, that we're still worshiping together under one roof, one group, one church. And to me, that is the essence and the beauty of God's church.
Well, Eddie, I'm going to let that be the last word, because that's what people should remember this for. So, yeah, thank you for joining us. And yeah, just folks, look out for the Acts 1:8 ministry of Mount Carmel as it continues to continue going on. And in the meantime, this has been Say What? And we will be, as I said, on break for August, but back in September, and look forward to engaging with you again in this medium. But until then, have a great evening and a great month of August. See ya.